World Neverland, Daily Life in the Elnea Kingdom Switch Review by Kevin Gibson aka Program. Real life sucks. Sure, it does have beautiful hallmark moments sprinkled throughout the roller coaster of crap you've been forced to ride, but for every fantastic moment there is always those dreadful ones. Long, tedious days in the office, horrendous fights with family and relationship-shattering events between friends and partners. Let's not forget money issues, car problems, debt, and the fun pile of dung life flings at you when least expected. No matter how great your life is compared to others, we're all in need of an escape. Now, some choose less favorable options, while most of the people who are listening to this review decide to shelf their problems by living another life. Every game provides this escape to some extent. Simulation RPGs take this concept and run with it by providing the player a completely alternate life. Now, the marketplace for this genre is cluttered, but titles like Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, and Second Life set the precedence for how to pull it off well. World Neverland, Elnea Kingdom for Nintendo Switch is the latest installment in this genre, and I might be saying it wrong, but Althi Inc. is not here to take a slice of the simulation RPG cake. No, it wants the whole freaking baking industry. But the major question is, will we turn to this title versus the other powerhouses whenever we get a sweet tooth? Well, folks, it's my humble duty to answer that question for you. History and stats. Elnea Kingdom is the latest installment of the long-running World Neverland series that debuted way back in 1997. This title is the first of the series to leave Japan, but that's not the only unique aspect of the Switch's version. Elnea Kingdom was first released in English on iOS and Android 2 years ago, with a bucket full of achievements to write home about. On this platform, the game is an online, free-to-play experience and generated a staggering 1.12 million downloads worldwide, while maintaining over a 4.4 rating on both mobile platforms. That's great in my opinion. Now, Althi Inc. could have easily taken the lazy route and ported the game over as is, slapped a price tag on that bad boy, and maintained the microtransaction system we've all come to know and tolerate. Instead, they did something that I haven't seen done before. It might have, but not to my knowledge. They gave this version a price tag of $29 and revamped it into being a completely offline experience, taking away all forms of microtransactions. Yes, you've heard me correctly. You don't need hearing aids. You, as the gamer, were given the choice to either play the game as a free-to-play version on Android or iOS, or you can play it on the Nintendo Switch as a free-to-play offline experience. And in this version, you can play the game outright entirely with the ability to obtain any item you need by completing quests, loot drops in dungeons, and other various ways. Now, I don't want to ramble on about this topic for too long, so I'll leave it at this. Thank you, Althi Inc. I love this idea, and I truly feel like you stumbled onto a gold mine that I hope other free-to-play titles decide to utilize. All of this won't matter now if the game is a broken disaster not worth spending money on, so let's dive deeper to figure out what Elnea Kingdom has to offer. Gameplay. When choosing a new simulation RPG to escape into, having that sense of freedom to do whatever the heck you want is key. On the daily, I'm forced to partake in structured, ritualistic tasks that I would rather not do, so having a game where I can decide what path to take just adds to the immersion for me. World Neverland is the prime example of what I'm talking about. You start as a traveler, trying your hand at life in the Elnea Kingdom. From the moment you start your journey, the entire map is open for exploration. Now you can roam and screw any hand-fed missions like I did at first, but I strongly suggest following the quest line up until the end of the tutorial missions, since there's a lot of depth to the game that you will have a tough time stumbling onto without a little guidance. If you take my advice, 5 to 10 hours of gameplay will consist of sampling everything the kingdom has to offer, allowing you to get a feel for what you're allowed to do and what path you would like your character to go down. If not, then there will be an extra hour or two of Just roaming, still having fun, but missing out on a lot of opportunities. The major activities that will take up most of your time consist of farming, gathering, fishing, building relations, and exploration. From there, you're able to choose a job to invest into. These jobs span from your average farmer or miner to knights and their version of a priest. Picking the job that best suits your playstyle is important, since each job title provides unique loot and unlock other aspects of the game that are otherwise impossible without that title. For example, I just started being a farmer, which allows you to take care of the rudders, which is their version of cattle, making cheese and helping with the kingdom's harvest. See, I love this element of gameplay because it allows you to choose what you want to do with your time and experience it the way that you would like to and not feel forced to follow quest lines and story arcs that you don't even care about when all you want to do is just milk some cows. Now, I won't go into the details of every aspect of the game since you have a life or multiple lives to live. But what I will say is every job and activity has its own style of gameplay that adds variety, helping to prevent the game from getting stale. To briefly name a few, fishing has a minigame that involves mashing a button while preventing the meter from hitting the end of the arc. Gathering has a chance of spawning enemies to fight, and exploration has a fleshed out battle system, which I will explain in a bit. The biggest gripe I have with these various tasks is that they all rely on an RPG system that can be bipolar and unforgiving. One of the first quests took me over 15 minutes trying to find one single item, but later, when I went back to gathering, I found 10 of those freaking things back to back. Now I'm all for a good RNG system, but it's frustrating when I'm spamming one area for items to the point where I lose my patience. Like, it got to the point where my wife was like, if I have to watch you do this the entire time, I would rather you not review this game. Luckily, I only had that frustration a couple times. Now, the battle mechanics in Elnea Kingdom are nothing to write home about, but I wasn't expecting the depth it provides for the genre of gaming it's under, so I was pleasantly surprised. So when exploring a dungeon, you simply press A, and your party moves in a linear fashion through the area. Pretty simple. Your character can be accompanied by 2 other citizens by running into them when you start the dungeon, or you can invite friends to join you. There are 3 different events that can trigger during your exploration, causing your party to stop and deal with it. Battles, traps, and treasure. The battles can be auto-completed, which is what I used for most of the easy encounters. But when you're dealing with a boss, or if you just want to do this throughout the entire playthrough for exploration, you have the option of choosing your attacks in a turn-based style system for only your character though. Each character gets 5 attacks a turn, the last attack always being the strongest, and each one progressively progressively increases its strength. When choosing your character's attacks, you have a choice between like low, medium, and high powered attacks. You'll see the exact names in the video. You also have a magic attack, a guard, and a special that is unlocked after taking and dealing a select amount of damage. Along with your stats, your prowess in battle is determined by the weapons you have equipped and your job title. Different enemies are weak against certain weapons, adding a layer of strategy to the combat, determining on which weapons you use and which your party members have. I haven't had any issues with the difficulty scale yet, despite like a couple battles starting out before I had friends to join me, but I've only really been completing areas that are around my character's current level. Another cool thing is if you want to go balls to the wall and just jump right into the hardest difficulty, you can do that after you go through I think a couple quests. So the fast travel in Elnea Kingdom was one of the first eye-popping mechanics that this game has to offer. So instead of your typical choose location, transition screen, and then you arrived, which is basically every game, Elnea Kingdom shows your character moving in real time throughout the kingdom until you reach your destination. This system does get a little redundant over time, and I feel like having the option to allow normal fast travel would be nice, but with the layer of immersion it adds, I can't complain too loudly. Let's talk about immersion. As you can see thus far, Elnea Kingdom provides an expansive experience that can provide hours of enjoyment. That being said, with any simulation RPG, gameplay doesn't mean anything if the atmosphere the experience creates isn't enticing enough to keep you immersed. Some of the major mechanics Elnea Kingdom offers to increase this level of immersion are the same reasons why it almost fell short in this category. The fast travel experience is huge, since it does give you the feeling of truly traveling throughout the kingdom to reach each destination. Another huge bonus is the ability to stop traveling to interact with a friend you see along the way, or if traveling past an area jogs your memory, reminding you of another thing that takes precedence over your current mission, you can just stop whenever you want to. It's beautiful. Sadly, your character doesn't always travel the way he should, causing you to find yourself running into a wall repeatedly or running back and forth on the same path in an infinite loop until you hit cancel. Every time that occurred, I remembered I was reviewing the game and lost the aura of relaxation the experience provoked. It did generate multiple episodes of laughter at how lost and confused my poor guy appeared, but I doubt that's the feeling the developers were looking for. Now, Elnea Kingdom was originally designed to be a free-to-play title for Android and iOS, offering an online experience where you can interact with other players. I haven't gotten the chance to compare the two games, so I'm not sure if the issues I experienced with the NPCs are unique to the Switch version. With this being an offline experience, the only interactions you have with other citizens of Elnea Kingdom are the NPCs, so it is important that those interactions feel genuine and keep you immersed in the experience. And since this is also a huge portion of the game, with you making friends for various reasons, and you also need to find a wife or husband to have children, allowing you to continue your lineage. Interactions with the NPCs are not terrible, but left something to be desired for sure, and a good portion of it was downright comical. For example, to progress your relationship with any person, I basically just continued to bug them over and over. I would start one line, ask them how the day was. They say it's fine in some form, they leave, and then I just stalk them and ask them again the same exact question over and over again, since you only have a very limited pool of conversation starters, until they became my friend. So far in my playtime, the conversations I've had were identical with every person to an extent. The only things that really alter the context of these conversations is the job title they have, the time of year, or if an event is taking place that day, and also the relationship status you have with that individual. But every time you ask them the same question, which seems required to progress your relationship, it's always the same response when you're asking the same exact person. If it wouldn't really have been so bad though if the conversation themselves were engaging, but sadly it was very dry and way too corny when pursuing a romantic partner. Like, right when I asked them to go on a date, instantly I loved them apparently, and then we're just talking about getting married. Date number 1. And all I really said was, how's the weather? Over and over and over again. So yeah, that took away from the experience a little bit for me. The other issue I had with the NPC interactions that broke the immersion for me was when a large group of your friends and strangers all decided to bombard you at once with requests, random tidbits of information, or just asking you to buy stuff from them. Your friends have no boundaries during these moments either, rushing into your house one by one to bug you, just standing in a line while you're trying to cook dinner and trying to enjoy a peaceful night alone. With some bug fixes and adjustments to these features I've listed, I would have been lost in the experience the entire time, but sadly that wasn't the case. But that being said, the overall gameplay elements I described so far do make up for the issues that I just listed. And the game also redeems itself with an immersion mechanic that I'm in love with. Your character ages and dies. Once that happens, you can continue playing as your offspring, piggybacking off the choices and successes of their parents, aka your character. Now, I haven't gotten anywhere close to living a full life with my first character, so I'm not exactly sure how everything works with this, But just the fact alone that this is here is a game changer. Majority of the titles in this genre don't really have a true ending, but once you get to a certain status and complete the major quests the game provides you, there isn't really much of a reason to continue playing, and if you do, it's just the same thing over and over again, and you don't really have any way of moving up more than you have. So having the ability to play as your children is a fantastic way to remove that obstacle and provide you more options that other titles lack. Now, of course, the game does have to be enjoyable enough to play up to that point. Graphics and soundtrack. Now, I don't have much to go over when it comes to the graphics and soundtrack because there wasn't much that stood out to me. But in this case, that's actually a good thing. Elnea Kingdom is a beautiful game for what it was trying to achieve, but the art style never popped out, and there was never points where I had to stop and admire what I was looking at. The reason why I don't feel like that was bad by any means is because all the subtle detail and simple design helped add to the immersion without drawing too much attention to itself. Now, the only animation that was unfortunate at first was the gliding movement of your character, which I'm sure you've seen by now. After a while, it wasn't a distraction, so I can't bash on it the way I wanted to at first. It does get easier to tolerate. Now, the soundtrack falls into the same category. Each area seems to have a different track associated with it, and I don't recall ever hearing the same score to the point where I grew bored. It has a relaxing vibe throughout the soundtrack and provided an extra layer of immersion. Throughout my experience with this game, I was relaxed and in a state of zen. Both the graphics and soundtrack together helped get me to that point. Nothing special, but it did its job well. Is this worth the price tag, and should you buy it? Now, if you decide to start following my reviews, you will learn that I'm a strong believer in a simple philosophy. Every dollar you spend on a game should equal an hour of gameplay. Now, I can't really remember where I picked that up, because I remember reading it or hearing it from somewhere, but it completely altered my entire viewpoint of how games should be reviewed and how I judge, a game before I end up buying it. If you end up putting more hours into the dollar amount that you spent, then the game was well worth it, in my opinion. And in some form, that means you enjoyed the game. Unless you want to put like 50 hours into a game that you hate just to punish yourself, then this philosophy probably isn't for you. But this way of thinking is how I will base a large portion of my overall score, along with your typical breakdowns. Now, when it comes to Elnea Kingdom, I played right around the 30 hours of gameplay I was aiming for. I might have been over or under a couple hours, but my mind was made up and my scoring hand is ready. I can say with confidence that this game will easily provide you 30 hours of gameplay, and many more after that if you're into this genre. If you have been flirting with the idea of trying a simulation RPG, World Neverland Elnea Kingdom for the Nintendo Switch would be the perfect title to get your feet wet. I'm already looking forward to playing this game a lot more than I already have. Sure, there are many flaws, causing to get a lower score, but I was surprised just as much as I was disappointed. It was a pleasure providing this review to you guys, and I hope this helps you determine how to spend your time and hard-earned money. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some rudders to milk. Final verdict. Gameplay, a solid 5 out of 5, with graphics and soundtrack, also a 5 out of 5. Immersion was a dip at 3 out of 5, where the final score is a 4 out of 5.